Senator from California.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm here to talk about the sanctuary cities legislation and the GMO labeling issue, which Senator Tester was so eloquent about. And if ever there should be a leader on this Senate floor telling us the truth about the GMO label bill, it's him, because he deals with this. He, as he explained, has worked a family farm for a long time in his family for generations. But unfortunately, at this point, it's big agribusiness that is influencing this. But I am more hopeful than he is that we can stop the bill. But let me talk about the fact that we have an immigration crisis in this nation. Part of it is because we turned away from a very important bill, a bipartisan bill in 2013 that was comprehensive immigration reform, bipartisan, passed by a huge number of senators, and it died in the Republican House. That's number one. Number two, we have a Supreme Court that is deadlocked on the immigration issue, and senators on the other side of the aisle won't even bring up President Obama's Supreme Court nominee for a hearing. For a hearing. They won't do their job. So the House Republicans killed immigration reform that was comprehensive back in 2013, and the Senate Republicans are deadlocking the Supreme Court for partisan purposes. It's a nightmare that can only be rectified in this election that's coming up. But today, we're going to be facing a vote on sanctuary cities legislation instead of taking another vote on the comprehensive immigration bill, which would have added 20,000 more Border Patrol agents, increased surveillance, hired additional prosecutors and judges to boost prosecutions of illegal border crossings, and the measure would have made it clear that serious or violent felons will never, ever get a pathway to citizenship or even legal status. And that bill would have brought families out of the shadows, take away the fear of deportation, separating loved ones, parents being sent back when kids who were born here alone. And sanctuary cities is important because it leads to cooperation with the local police, and it leads to reporting crimes in the communities. The fact is, the sanctuary cities bill before us will increase crime, and make our communities less safe. It would undermine the trust that has been developed between police and immigrant communities, setting back efforts to protect victims and put criminals behind bars. And let us be clear, it will cut the sanctuary cities bill of Senator Toomey's for some crazy reason. He cuts community development block grant funding, which can be used by the police to buy equipment, rehab a police station, fund special anti-crime initiatives. Why would anyone ever get rid of funding for our law enforcement when they are under siege? The bill also cuts Economic Development Administration grants, which foster job creation and attract private investment. Now, I know that this sanctuary cities bill is another piece of political garbage. I want to be clear here, because at the end of the day, it will increase crime in our communities. I was a county supervisor. I served proudly, and I know how important local grants are to the local economy. So to punish communities by taking these funds away because they don't decide that Uncle Sam has a right to tell them what to do is the dumbest idea ever. Let's make communities safer by passing real immigration reform, comprehensive reform, and defeat these misguided bills that are coming before us. And speaking of misguided bills, I want to talk about another one, and that is the Roberts bill on labeling genetically modified organisms, or should I say not labeling genetically modified organisms, because the definition of GMO is so narrow that most of the products that really are engineered will not have to have the label. Now, if ever there was a bill that proves that leaders are out of touch, that leaders are elitist, it is this bill. People want information. Information that is given in 64 nations. Simple information. You go to the grocery store, you see on a label whether the product you're buying is genetically modified. Pretty straightforward. Don't create some definition that essentially exempts most of the products. What a shuck and a jive. What a scam on the American people. And what a scam to say, if, by the way, even some of the products that will still be labeled, you may have to use your smartphone or website to find out what's in the product. I believe, call me old-fashioned, that if 2/3 of the world's population, 64 countries, have this information, I want my constituents to have the information. Why should a Russian have this information and an American not? Why should a Chinese person have this information and an American not? Why should someone in New Zealand have this information and an American not? Why should a Japanese person have this information and America not? Why should 64 nations give their people to simple information and we can't do it here? Why are we punishing our people, giving them less information? Do we feel we're so smart and smug that we can keep this information from our people? I don't understand it. And this bill should be rejected. Now, is this an issue people care about? Yes. 90% of Americans want to know if the food they buy has been genetically engineered. What this bill gives them is confusing at best and no information at worst. Let me be specific, because I don't want someone to say, oh, Senator Boxer is upset, but she hasn't given us the details. So bear with me. Here are the details. First, the bill's definition of genetically engineered, or GE food as it is known, genetically engineered, is extremely narrow. The Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, says that many common foods made with genetically engineered corn syrup, sugar, and soybean oil would not be labeled under this bill. For example, products that many of us have right now in our kitchens, such as yogurt, salad dressings, cereal, ketchup, ice cream, pink lemonade, and even cough syrups would not be required to have a label, even though they are derived from genetically modified organisms. It's important to know if your food is made with GMOs. I'll tell you why. Many of us don't know yet if GMOs are fine. Let's say we think they're fine. We still need to know if they're in our food, number one, because it's our right to know, but secondly, because GMO crops are heavily sprayed with pesticide. Let me repeat that. You may think GMOs are fine, and they may be fine. The jury's out. But we know GMO crops are heavily sprayed with pesticide. So if I have a little baby and I don't want to expose my baby to pesticides, if it's a GMO product, you know it's been sprayed heavily. According to USGS, that's the U.S. Geological Survey, growers sprayed 280 million pounds of Roundup in 2012, a pound of herbicide for every single person in our country. A pound of pesticide is sprayed for every single person in our country. Most foods are heavily sprayed. I want to know when I go to the store, because sometimes I do shop for my grandkids, I would like to know if it's a GMO product, because guess what? Then I know it's been sprayed by pesticide. Now, I'm going to take you into the label. Let's set aside the narrow definition. Let's look at what somebody has to go through under the Roberts bill to find out if there's GMOs. Here's a picture. This is a dad in a supermarket with his kids. One is in the basket with the products, and one is walking alongside a toddler. Pretty common sight. What would it be like this for this dad with his two kids to get the information he wants under this bill? He's searching the shelves for items on his grocery list. We know what that's like. You got the two kids here, one is in the basket, one is over here. You got your list in front of you. He picks up a product. He looks for a label to learn whether the food has been genetically engineered. Under this bill, the chances are overwhelming that there won't be a simple label on it. But there may be a phone number, a website, or a QR code, and it's not clearly defined in this bill. But what it means is that this dad would have to stop shopping. For every item on his list, he would have to pull out his phone or make a call or type in a long website or scan a QR code just to find out if the product he wants to buy is genetically engineered. So let's say he has 50 products in his basket. 50. Does he have to make 50 phone calls? Can you imagine looking up 50 websites, scanning 50 different QR codes with a confusing cell phone app? You can't imagine it, because it isn't going to happen, because by that time these kids have melted down, and so has Dad. And he says, I give up. I give up. He is not going to make 50 phone calls. And even if he owns a smartphone, which, by the way, many Americans still do not, he may not really know exactly how to work it. According to Pew Research, only 30% of Americans over 65 own a smartphone. Just half of the people living in a rural area own one. And just because someone owns a smartphone doesn't mean, again, they know how to use it. Why are we putting Americans through hoops like this just to find out what they're feeding their families? Why? I'll tell you why. Big agriculture, special interests, campaign donations, and we'll be able to prove it. Now, 70 groups are against this horrible legislation. Center for Food Safety, Empire State Consumer Project, Family Farm Defenders, Farm Aid, Food Alliance, Label GMOs, Maine Organic Farmers, Midwest Organic and Sustainable Education Service, Northeast Organic Farming, Our Family Farms, Advancement Foundation International, Rural Advancement Foundation International, Sierra Club, Slow Food USA, Sunnyside CSA, Public Interest Research Group. It goes on and on. And believe me, my colleagues, you're going to hear from these people over the next several days until we vote on this. Why are my friends in this body so afraid of letting consumers know what's in their food? Because they are doing the bidding of the big agricultural companies, and that's what I believe. It is my opinion. Because why on earth would we stop people in this country from getting the same information that the people of Russia get, the people of Japan get, the people in the EU get, the people in Australia get, the people in New Zealand get? Why would you do that? Don't you believe in the consumer right to know? This bill should be titled, The Consumer's Right Not to Know. Not to know. That's what this bill is. Now, we know that the people of this nation are smart. They will use this information if we only give it to them in the best way they can. Some will decide they don't want GMOs. Some will decide they do. If the price is better and they don't have a problem, it's fine. Let the people decide. It was like the dolphin safe label that I created way back in the 90s. The tuna fishermen were killing tens of thousands of dolphin a year because they were using purse seine nets. The dolphin were swimming over the tuna, and tens of thousands of dolphins a year were dying. And the people wrote to me and said, "Senator, is there a way you can help?" I said, "Yeah, let's put a label on, say which tuna companies are fishing dolphin safe, and let the consumer decide." We have saved hundreds of thousands of dolphin over the years. But some people still will buy the other kind of tuna. That's their choice. All I'm saying is treat people with respect. Don't be an elitist. Don't keep information from them. Don't make them jump through hoops. I'll tell you the truth, this is the biggest issue in this election. Government elite telling people what they can know and what they can't know, and making them go through hoops, and making them use a smartphone, and defining GMO in such a way that many products aren't covered. What a sick bill that is. If you don't want to have this done by the states, why don't you come to the table and negotiate in good faith? The FDA currently labels more than 3,000 ingredients. They require the labeling of more than 3,000 ingredients, additives, and processes. And millions of Americans have filed comments with FDA urging the agency to label GE foods so they can have this information at their fingertips. 90% of the people want a simple label. What you are giving them in this so-called compromise is the narrowest definition of what is a genetically modified food, so that most of that food is never going to be labeled. By the way, it could even be labeled organic, which is a travesty. A travesty. You've got 70 organizations and counting against it. 90% of the people want a simple deal. But oh no, the elitists in this chamber, they know better. Oh, they're going to do, oh, they know better. They took a simple concept, labeling just like we did on the tuna can, and they turned it into a nightmare for the consumer. The consumer will never find out. This dad will never know, because while he's got his kids there, he's got his grocery list, he's got to be looking at every single thing that's in his cart, every single product. Most of them will not have a simple label. A lot of them are GMO and they're not labeled. And it seems to me an embarrassment that we would even bring this bill up. And I will do everything in my power to stop this bill. I'd rather do nothing than this sham of a bill that does the bidding of the special, powerful interests and says to the American people, you know what, sorry folks, we don't really trust you with this information because we don't really know what you're going to do with it. Too bad you don't know what they're going to do with it. You have no right as a senator to determine what the American people will do with information. If it's a national security issue, of course, that's different. We know about that. But if it's a consumer right to know what's in your food, don't talk about how great this bill is, because it is the opposite. It is completely the opposite of what it says. It is not truly a labeling bill. It's a phony sham, and I hope we defeat it whenever we get to it. Thank you. I yield the floor.